In this episode, I explore with Jay his fear of commitment. He's been in a lot of relationships. He's had a lot of struggles when it comes down to really committing to being close and creating intimacy. So I invite you to watch this interaction with Jay where we really flesh out what is the root cause of his fear and how he can overcome it. Welcome to the Aviv Levi podcast. I'm your host. My name is J.F. Benoit. I'm the best-selling author of Addicted to the Monkey Mind and Aviv Levi, An Adventure in Belonging. After 12 years of running a holistic addiction treatment center and decades of helping people who have been challenged with conflicts in their relationships, anxiety, depression, and even addiction, what I saw is that the common denominator of our pain and suffering is based on the lack of true connection with ourselves and with other people. Connection underscores absolutely everything in our lives. Whenever we're experiencing distress, when we're being reactive or experiencing triggers, the root cause is often a disconnection and a break in our ability to experience true belonging. So I bring a wealth of experience and empathy, creating a space where you could feel understood and less alone in your struggles. With connections with guests like you and interviews, I'm going to help you truly and support you to be your true self, to gain the ability to shed all the self-judgments that we have about ourselves, and instead really focusing on the resilient person that you are, on the courageous person that you are, and building this ability to experience yourself as this innate love and value that exists within you. So I'm really glad that you're here. Let's explore this together in another episode of Aviv Levi. Welcome, Jay. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. And tell us a little bit about yourself and what you'd like to explore today.
Okay. I'm single. I'm 67. And I would like to be in a relationship, but I keep putting out to the universe that I want to be in a relationship. But for the last 4 years, I have not. And so I'd like to explore maybe some of my attitudes or behaviors or as to why I'm not getting what I say I want.
Right.
Sometimes I think, well, if I really wanted it, I'd have it. But yet there's something inside me that's keeping me from reaching out and connecting with people and creating that relationship that I really am yearning for.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for wanting to explore that. Sometimes it could be a little fragile for people, and I really think that you're not alone in that. I think there's a lot of people who want to be in an intimate relationship and are struggling to find a way to feel safe enough to create those connections. So, thank you for opening your heart. Tell me a little bit about what it's been like for you in previous relationships.
Well, one relationship that I was in, as soon as the gals wanted more commitment, I kind of got scared and cut it off. So I don't know. I think part of it might be a fear of commitment, which then might lead to the fear of getting hurt again.
Right. And what is that like for you? What happens when you get to that place?
Well, I was in one relationship and the person was pressing me to, she wanted me to be in a financial place where we could get a place together, and it was, I guess the pressure, I didn't like it. It didn't feel good, so I backed off, and I guess I felt I was more comfortable being alone than being pressured into something I was uncomfortable with.
So let's take a look, if that's all right, for a second, to kind of flesh that out a little bit. So you're describing a lot of pressure, right, from a partner who's asking you to commit further in the relationship. What's happening to you when you're in that moment, right, of feeling pressure? What are some of the thoughts that are running in your mind?
Hmm. I guess I just want to back away. The thoughts, the fear of
So,
commitment. I think.
right.
You
So
know.
notice what's interesting. I think a lot of us, when we are in high stress moment like that, it can be hard for us to even grasp what's really happening, right? So, but there's some kind of pressure that you're describing that's happening in that moment. And I think it's very common for us to have these moments of high intensity. And when you're feeling pressure, what is actually happening for Jay in that moment? So the knee jerk reaction you're describing is to want to pull away, right?
Yeah, it's a feeling of anxiety and a little bit of fear of um, maybe part of it is the fear of losing control, the control of just the autonomy and feeling like I'm in control and being able to take care of myself safely
Okay.
and having and then having to answer to somebody else and possibly being even judged by that other person. So rather than go there and work through that process, sometimes for me it's just easier to back away and just not be in relationship.
Right. So notice it's like I'm hearing the thoughts are saying, okay, it's easier. Just pull away. It's easier, right? I might lose control was another aspect that you point out, meaning that I might not be in charge anymore, right? So notice, like, even as you listen to me saying that, what kind of emotion does that evoke in you? Pull away, Jay. Pull away, right?
I think it goes back to some childhood conditioning
Mm-hmm.
where from a very young age I felt like I had to take care of myself because there was no one there to take care of me, and so
Mm.
part of that is a matter of I have to be able to control my environment to feel safe, and
Wow.
and then when I'm in relationship with someone else and they're pressuring me towards something that doesn't feel that comfortable, it's just easier for me to back off and create that safe space for me to navigate the world.
Right. What you're saying here is really profound, Jay, because this is exactly what happened to us, meaning that the way we operate today is oftentimes a sort of a conditioning that we've received, right? So you said something that was really important to pay attention to, and my heart started sinking when you said that. Something about that you were left alone in your childhood. Is that what you said?
Yeah, my father left when I was about 3.5 years old. My
Okay.
mother, my mother, I called her an absentee mom. When my older sister was old enough to take care of us, my mom was off doing her thing, and my sister and older brother were there to take care of us. And then my mother remarried, and my stepdad, I could feel that he didn't like me. I was a bit ADHD and hyperactive, and I was really curious about mechanical things, and I would take things apart. Like
Mm-hmm.
I took his camera apart. Well, obviously he's not going to like that, right? So he, but I could just feel the energy from him that he didn't really like me. And yet, as a young child, I just wanted to be held and loved and nurtured. And I wasn't getting that from my mother or my stepdad. And of course, my
Mm-hmm.
older brother and sister, their responsibility was not to nurture their younger brother.
Right.
They did take care of me as far as making sure I was fed and things like that. But the feeling of connecting with my parents, the feeling of feeling safe at home, the feeling of security, from a very young age, I just felt like I have to take care of myself, and no one
Mm,
else is going to do it. And
mm,
maybe that reflects into the relationships where when I start into a relationship, I want to be in the relationship and it's fun and exciting. But when then you get down to the more serious parts of commitment and how we're going to coexist, I start feeling a little out of control, and it's like, oh, I got to back off because this is where I'm safe. And as much as I want to be in a relationship with someone, and I see other relationships that appear to be real loving and connected, I desire that, but I'm having a difficult time getting past my inner voices that then go, oh, you need to back off and stay safe. Don't take the risk. You're going to get hurt. So,
Well, you're saying something really precious here, which is that the sense of safety, and this is what happens to most of us, is that we develop false ways of, I call them, false ways, false habits of behaviors, right, that attempt to keep us safe and attempt to keep us connected. But in reality, those were created at a time where you did the best you knew how, right? Like as you're describing, if you were raised with an absent mother, right, it makes total sense that you would have, in order to be safe, you would have to kind of separate yourself from even the love that you might be experiencing for your mom, because your mom might just disappear at any time, right? So maybe she'll show up for a bit, but then she's gone. So in order to keep Jay safe, that makes so much sense, right? That Jay would just go, okay, well, I have to just keep my distance here, right? I have to keep myself separated. And so
yeah.
this is what happens to the majority of us, is that we develop these coping ways of behaving, right, as a way to protect ourselves. And it did work at that time. But then today, we're sort of, it's as if it exists at a cellular level, right? Those
Right.
responses are like, they feel so scary in that moment, right? And what is happening to Jay? You see, the important aspect is that there's a neglect that's happening to Jay in that moment. The moment that he's pulling away, right? So you're with someone, you're developing a relationship, and then there's that moment, right, where you're pulling away, but it's kind of like as you're pulling away, there's a sense, it's kind of like the old familiar sense of being comfortable that you're taking care of yourself, but at the same time, what settles in for Jay? Where do you end up?
Well, I end up still alone and feeling lonely, but
And what,
there's still that underlying feeling that I really want the connection. I really
right.
want to feel I really want to feel safe to be able to open up and give my heart to somebody and feel like they're not just going to stomp on it and hurt me. And that's the biggest fear, is the fear of, if I open up my heart and I really show who I am and become vulnerable, and then you walk away, oh, that hurts.
It's
That's scary.
fascinating to, yeah, and when you say that, it's like on one hand I go, wow, that makes so much sense, right? It's kind of like, okay, I can see what you're doing and I can see how you're taking care of yourself. On the other end though, aren't you already creating the loneliness?
Oh, you mean by being alone and kind of self-isolating and not really reaching out
Right.
and trying to make connection?
Right. So it's like the fear is to be rejected. So it's like the pattern is, okay, well, I'll reject myself before that could happen.
Right.
Right. But you're already rejected. Right. So it's a very strange concept that the mind has. The mind has a terrifying fear. I mean, you tell me if that resonates true. Like, okay, so if I reject myself, somehow I'm safer than if somebody else rejects me.
Yeah, I guess I've never really considered it as self-rejection. I've
Uh-huh.
always looked at it as a way to protect myself from getting hurt by becoming vulnerable. I just instead of putting myself in a place where I can be vulnerable, I'm just going to stay in my little safe place and look out into the world and go, wow, look at all these happy people. How come I can't be one of them? What's wrong with me? You know?
Right. And,
So,
well, and how harsh, like even when you said that, what's wrong with me? It's like my heart just sunk, right? It's just like, wait a second. Why would there be anything wrong with Jay?
well, that's a good question, because when I really look at it, I think I'm a pretty amazing guy, and I really don't think, when I really look at it, I really don't think there's anything wrong with me.
Well, as
So
you're, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because as you're sharing right now with me,
yeah,
I'm experiencing you as a very genuine man. Like you dove right into this. You're really telling me the core of your challenge that you've had for most of your life, and I see you as like an open book. Like you're just, and what kind of a man does that?
I don't know how to answer that. What kind of man does that?
It's fascinating because I see this constantly happening, Jay. It's very amazing how when I'm describing is the experience that I'm having of you in this moment, okay?
Right.
And I'm saying I'm in the presence of a very authentic man, a very courageous man who's really sharing openly his dilemma, his struggle. He's talking about the way he was raised. So for me, the man is a connected, honest, open-hearted man, and he's right here, right? But then when we listen to the thoughts that you're describing of your habit of keeping you safe, you're describing that perhaps there's something wrong with this man, or you're describing that it's like not safe for him to be rejected by someone or to face possibly that possibility of being rejected. So he's better off isolating himself. And when you're describing all of that, this is where in my emotional body, I get disconnected from the man that's here, and I can feel the weight of ending up alone, but it's not a match. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not the match of the man that I'm here now. I don't see it. It's almost like it's challenging to wrap my mind around why the man that's here right now with me, who's such in his heart and open, why would he end up alone?
Well, what comes to mind is last night I went to an event, and some friends of mine were there, and
Yeah.
I had a really great conversation with a gentleman who really opened up to me, and I opened up to him, and the way he was describing how he sees me and how he feels about me and how they want me to be part of their community, and the way his wife embraces me and loves me, I look at that and I go, what's the catch? You know,
Mm,
if I really buy into what you're saying, if I buy into what you're saying, who I am, is there a catch? Am I going to get hurt? And even as we're talking, I'm thinking of myself, is that really me? How come I can't feel into that and be okay with being the person that they see? And how come I can't see that and just go, wow, that is me? And I can open up and join and be comfortable. There's something
right.
blocking me from letting down that last barrier to really go, wow, I guess I am okay. I am a cool guy. I am lovable, and
Yeah.
and I am desirable. It's just kind of weird, because sometimes people, when they're describing me, I even question, am I just deceiving you, or putting up some sort of a front that you think I'm something? How come I can't just listen to this and say, yeah, this is Jay. He's cool. He's a good guy. He's loving. He's gentle. He's generous, and he can be in community and feel safe. There's
Yeah.
something blocking that.
Well, there's a lot of, when I listen to you talk right now, it's the primary emotion that's there is sadness. What's it
Yeah,
like for you?
yeah. It does feel sad. It's like I really want to believe what I'm hearing, but there's something inside me that's going, nah. You're still that little, that little boy that needs to be punished. And sometimes I even think that I perpetuate the fact that I'm a bad boy by creating experiences where I can self reject, or in a sense get rejected or get pushed away, to reinforce that core belief that I'm a bad boy and I'm not good enough.
Well,
And
it
yet I'm a
makes
grown
sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
I'm a
mean,
grown man now, so
well, here's the thing. It does make sense that if you think of the way you were raised, that the construct that happened in your childhood when you're left alone is there must be something wrong with you, right? Because
yeah,
it what else? It's like when we're children, we look at the world through the lens of, it's about us, right? It's about, like, there must be something about me that makes it that my mother is absent. She's not there, right? Which is,
right,
she's
right.
supposed to be the primary caregiver. So that's, that makes sense. The wound that you're saying is present for you. This is epidemic in our society, meaning that we all carry those wounds from our childhood. Every single one of us carries those. But if you look at the dynamic, is that when I'm hearing what you're describing and the way you're treating yourself, there's appears to be an identity that's built around this wound, meaning that this is who Jay is, right?
Right,
Jay
right.
is like a wounded boy, right, who doesn't feel safe to open up and commit to a relationship. Well, what's very strange is kind of like this couple that you were sharing with us that you spent time with yesterday that are reflecting who you are, is very much the same experience I'm having now. And I'm sure the listeners can experience that too, is that the man that's here is a very loving man.
Yeah, and my biggest fear, I think, is that I'm going to open up and really fall in love with somebody and give them my entire heart, and then they're either just going to go away, or they're going to die, or for some reason they're going to leave me alone again to deal with that. I gave you everything and then you just walked away, and I guess that's the way I felt when I was a child. I guess is that here's my mother, who at times did nurture me and love me, but there were short moments of that, and it was very. I mean, it felt really good, but it didn't last. And then she would go away for long periods of time, and I was on my own to take care of myself, and it was like I really would like to be nurtured and loved on a more consistent basis, maybe to the point where I feel confident enough to where I'm not even like really needing it, going from needy to just feeling comfortable in my skin, and
Mm.
walking in the world going, yeah, you know I'm comfortable with the world and the people around me.
Well,
It's
does it make sense to you, Jade, that it would be challenging for us to, we have this wound that we carry, okay? And then the fear that because of this wound that we carry, it makes sense that the fear would say, don't get close to other people. At the same time, what we're not realizing, that's the thing that's very missing, is what we didn't receive growing up is the very thing that we need to give to ourselves. So meaning that it's like, what is it like for Jay to be alone?
Well, in some ways it feels safe, but other ways it's like it does get lonely. It's like to be totally alone, that means I'm not interacting with other people. And so I do enjoy interacting with other people. I enjoy having nice conversations. I enjoy doing events with other people. I can socialize with people really well. But then for some reason, I live alone. I cook my own meals. I take care of myself. And it kind of feels like when I was a kid, just taking care of myself. But there's still that yearning for the connection and the love and human touch.
And what's
That's
that
that
like not to have it, Jay?
it. I've never tried to describe it before, but I guess it's a bit of a hollow, empty feeling. And I
And
contrast I
when you're there,
contrast that with when I'm with my friends who openly hug me, and I feel comfortable being hugged by a man or hugging another man or a woman, and that feels nurturing, and it feels really good. And then when I'm by myself, um, like I was just at a week-long event where there was a lot of nurturing and connection in a small community, and then I go home all by myself and I find myself very emotional, and I even found myself at times crying, going, what's going on? And I realized what I was missing was that human touch and that sense of community and feeling loved. I don't know how else to describe it. And I guess
and
that's
what
why I want to talk about this, because I want to figure out how to keep that connection and that feeling going and not separate and isolate. I want to figure out how to create that on a long-term basis.
what
So,
I think is challenging is that you see our mind seeks solutions, right, to fix this loneliness problem. And but what's missing is the fact that you just described something very painful, which you go in community, you make amazing connection, you're there, but then you come home and you feel this pain of being alone,
yeah,
right? Being and who's attending to Jay in that moment? Like what is happening in that
I am.
moment of pain?
I feel sad. I feel lonely. Uh, I don't know how else to describe it. I'm alone. It feels uncomfortable. It's not what I want. So,
Yeah, and what you're describing there is is exactly what happens for most of us is just that we don't want that uncomfortable experience.
right.
And think of it this way, it's like the experience is the wound that keeps festering because we keep following a mind that says, "Hey, I don't want this. This is too uncomfortable. I don't want it."
And
What
so
do you
that part's uncomfortable, but then I think of contrasting that to, opening up and getting close to somebody, and then that start feeling uncomfortable. And it's like there's this two-edged sword where do I want to be uncomfortable here? Do I want to be uncomfortable here? Well, if I go to the one direction and into a relationship, it could turn out to be a very loving, supporting, nurturing relationship, which is what I think in my core I really want. So
Absolutely.
it's a matter of getting past that fear and trusting that, and I guess the bottom line is, even if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to die. It's not going to be the end of me. It's just going to be another experience. So,
Well, here's the thing. It's amazing what you're saying, how it sounds really good on paper, meaning that if we follow the train of thought of what you just said, it's kind of like logically we can say to ourselves, that's true. Okay. But
right,
imagine that these two events that you just described are actually very, very closely related, which is the event of you go into community, you come back home, and now you really feel the pain of being alone. Okay.
Right.
That
Right.
moment, okay, of then following a mind that says, I don't want this, I don't like this experience. I'm not sure exactly what you end up doing in because most of us have not learned to attune to the pain, right? Because when we say it's uncomfortable, what we're really saying is, I don't know how to be there for myself. I don't know how to be in this emotion, you see? And what's fascinating is the fear that you project into someone rejecting you is that exact same fear. Meaning that if that pain was to come because I'm rejected, I don't know how to be with myself. So the solution, do you see what I'm pointing at? The solution is not in the relationship or in the analytical mind that says, look, this makes no sense, you're safe. The solution lives in Jay really bring presence to this aloneness and attending to him. And I can feel like, as I say it, it's just my heart, just like, whoo, like I can feel the intensity of that. And at the same time, it's like, I can feel how much love exists. Like, can we just hold Jay for a minute? Do you know what I mean? When he gets home, after he experienced community and he's alone, can we hold him? Can we just
Who's
be?
we? Who's, you mean, can I just hold myself? What do you mean?
Yeah, it's a strange. I say it in a very strange way when I say we. It's like I am imagining myself. Like naturally for me, what I'm noticing is if just hearing that Jay ends up alone, right, and he's like in this pain of feeling like he can't quite receive this love or be okay enough to have this love, my tendency is to want to hold him, right? So if I was in the room with him, I would hold him and I would just not change anything, not trying to convince him of anything, but just like hold space for him to experience that pain and know that he's okay even if he has that pain. So, yeah, I guess what I'm referring to is how can Jay develop this kind of compassion and kindness and courage to be in that moment when you're alone and to make room for that, right? Make room for the tears, make room for the whole pain. And just, I think for a lot of us, maybe you can tell me what the fear would be to enter the pain fully.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is if I've been using this to take care of myself my whole life, and I
Yeah,
look at it, I face it,
yeah,
and I let it go, am I then going to be lost? Where's my anchor? Where can I go to feel safe? If I let this go, and then I'm just exposed and vulnerable, or am I exposed and vulnerable? That's it's the question of what's beyond that. If I let go of my tools that I've used for so long to take care of myself, then what? Kind
and
of the
what is
unknown.
it? Right, it is the unknown. You're absolutely right. And what is that tendency that you have when that pain shows up? What do you do?
Well, what I did this last time is I just kind of sat with it and I was like analyzing it and thinking about, well, why am I so emotional? Why am I feeling this so strongly? And what I came up with was that I was just in community where I felt loved and supported and taken care of, and that community disbanded and they all went home, and I went home and I'm all alone. So I'm just looking at it going, oh, okay, well, what I'm really feeling is that sense of loss of being nurtured and loved and seen for who I am.
Right, right.
I don't know how to create that for myself. I don't know
Oh
how to
no.
I don't know how to love myself, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And right now I can feel that depth of connection with you, Jay, is so strong. Look at the heart that's coming through this pain, right?
All I've ever wanted to do was to love people and be loved. My,
Yeah,
my first wife, she got frustrated with me and she tried to control me by withholding affection. And it's like, whoa. And at the time, I didn't even know how to express what I needed. But what I really wanted more than anything else was just to be loved for who I was and be nurtured and held. I didn't need anything else. And eventually that led to me leaving because I wasn't getting what I really wanted or needed, and I didn't know how to express that to her, and she didn't know how to recognize it in me. And in her thoughts, the way to get what she wanted was to withhold affection and try to control my behavior, which really just pushed me further away. So
how is it right now, Jay, because you've really shared your heart with me right now, and I really feel connected to you when you do that. I'm just noticing, how was that experience? Is that something to be afraid of?
no, it actually feels good to let it out. It feels good to release that energy, and and I know when I am more vulnerable that people. I know when people are vulnerable around me, I feel closer to them, and I've had the
Right.
experience too. That when I'm vulnerable, people feel closer to me, and that brings us together. Whereas isolating and feeling sorry for myself just creates this wall where we can't connect at all because they don't see me and I don't see them, and it's like this big facade. And I guess that's what I'm saying is when I'm vulnerable and people see me, it allows them to get closer to me.
Well, and
And and
I just experienced that, Jay, and it's really, really strong. It's very real what you're describing, and I want you to notice the difference between this is what we do to ourselves is we go to the why, right? So when we find ourselves in a moment of pain, we ask ourselves why. Well, if you were with a 5-year-old who was in pain and you start asking all these questions, the 5-year-old is going to get lost. He's just going to go, "What are you talking about? I don't, there's no rationale behind it." And presence and love, right, to our wounds is something that we haven't been taught to do. We haven't learned to attune to our emotional body and to not have an agenda for it, to not judge it, and not seeking analytical answers, but just to bring presence. And think of it this way: the muscle that you're now just building, even by opening up right this second, right, is the muscle that will lead you to open to someone, to get close to someone. The more you have this ability to build a safety that you require from somebody else, meaning that first it has to exist within Jay. So Jay sitting alone, and then it's painful, right? But sitting alone, when those moments occur, to breathe through that, to make room, and to start having compassion, right? To start having like, wow, this hurts, right? But then bring a lot of love and compassion, not fixing, not changing, not inquiring, why is it this way? Or because all of that starts heading in direction of explanation and starts heading in a direction of there must be something wrong with me, and all of these different ways that we have overused our analytical mind. It separates us, right? We're separated from our emotional body, and restoring that connection. Yes, it takes some courage initially, but the gift is that it'll naturally build this innate safety so that you can actually feel comfortable taking the risk, to be rejected, right? And to actually create this intimacy that you so deeply want. Does that make sense?
One of the things I'm hearing is get out of your head and feel what your heart is saying. Instead of
Yeah.
analyzing it, it's like, what am I feeling in my heart? What is it trying to tell me?
Yeah. And to bring presence, and it's a little daunting at the beginning because we're not used to it, but you just demonstrated it. Like, you naturally opened yourself to that emotional body. And then when I asked you how it was, you said that it felt kind of like a relief. Well, I can tell you in the last 25 years of working with people, that's the pattern I see, that most of us have been conditioned to fear our emotions, to fear this painful moment, this hurt, this sadness. Even really experiencing anger without reacting is the same way, because underneath anger exists sadness most of the time. So when we allow that experience to happen, and then we ask the person, well, how was it, right? Was it as bad as your mind made it? And without fail, people say, no, it wasn't. So the emotional body has intelligence, meaning the love that exists in Jay exists at the same place that the wounding exists.
Yeah.
So
it's not in my head. It's not in my head. I feel it in my body and in my heart and in my gut.
Yeah. And what a beautiful experience to allow the humanity to take its course. We are feeling creatures, and you are, it's so palpable how loving you are, Jay. I know that all the listeners right now are knowing that and feeling that and experiencing that from you. And the wound that you express of not being attended to is a wound that so many of us carry, and it is painful. And this fear of commitment exists. It's epidemic in our society. And for me, you've inspired me today, because I really feel and sense that we are so much stronger than we make ourselves to be. And we don't know the level of our strength because we follow a conditioned mind that tells us, we need the answer to this, or why did this happen? And we analyze everything. But when we go down to our heart and our gut and we just open up like you did, what ends up happening is magic. We find that we are wounded beings. Yes, we have been wounded. And at the same time, we are so freaking resilient and loving, right? It's, that part is intact within us, I want to thank you for spending that time with me today, Jay. You've really touched me, and your openness and your heart. And I hope that we've kind of created some open space for you to start feeling safer to really reach out for more connection in your life.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this has been good. I feel lighter, and I feel more confident in going out and connecting and taking that chance. So
Thanks for listening to the Aviv Levy podcast. Click on the link in the description below to record one of the questions you may have that we'll answer on one of our future podcasts. Also, I'd like to invite you to be a guest so that we can support you in delving deeper in resolving some of the core issues that you might be dealing with. Don't forget to check out my link for my books, also our newsletter, online groups, and the weekend adventures that I offer. Again, it is extremely rewarding to be on this self-discovery journey with you and to actually get to experience a sense of true belonging.